Awesome.
Well, Sandy, it's wonderful to meet you. Thank you so much for taking a minute out for the program today.
Thank you for having me. I can't wait for our
Yeah,
conversation.
it's going to be great. So let's begin with this. I always start with this question. 6 years ago, the pandemic, it was changing the world, changing our lives. How did you get through it, and how has it changed the way that you approach things today?
The pandemic was actually an amazing time for me in my life. I'm really one of those people that doesn't answer the question you think you will. I really dug into what I wanted in my life. When things like that happen, they filter your life, right? And my kids were growing older, they're in their 20s. So it was just my husband and I together in the home. We actually love each other tremendously. So we like spending time together, have a phenomenal relationship. So we enjoyed that time hunkering down together. And, a lot of creative initiatives came out of that. My business grew from that. I started realizing, what do I really want to do with my life? How do I want to live? How do I want to give back? How do I want to switch from doing a service to being in service? That was the huge change for me. And so I'm grateful for that time. I went through a lot of things that didn't work, a lot of things that I had creative ideas, didn't pan out, but a lot of learning and self-development. And, I'll get into my history a bit, but basically that time was an incubator for me, for ideas, for creativity, for intimacy. And my job in my family, my extended family, is the connector. I mean, I'm all about communication. So connecting people. So it was my job during the pandemic to do creative things with my family, to have, like, we had some crazy, the British Bake Off kind of things that we did with each other on costume parties, things like that online, because we had to. It was my mission during the pandemic to stay connected. And so I'm grateful that the life situation was like that. One other thing, Joe, that was crazy at the time was my 20-year-old daughter was in Italy when they closed down Italy. Like, remember how it started there?
Uh-huh.
And she was doing au pairing over there for a family. And I was like, honey, get on the next plane and come home. Mama wants you home. And she was furious with me. I don't think she talked to me for a few months after that because I kind of ruined her life plan. And when you're 20, you're like, I can do anything. I'm invincible. So what about the pandemic?
Huh?
So it was there was a lot going on at the same time then, and I'm grateful for it.
It's interesting. I was actually in the back of a water taxi in Venice the morning of September 11th, 2001. I was stuck in Italy, which wasn't a bad place to be at that time, but I had to
Mm,
navigate my way back, and I had a flight, a direct one way from Paris back to Kansas City, I believe like the 15th or 16th. That didn't exist. So I had to try to find a way. I ended up going to London. But it's interesting when you're in the middle of that level of international peril. And it's different now. Like then,
mm,
before 9/11, you could still run to an airport before TSA and get on a plane within 20 or 30 minutes. It was
that's
no big
right.
deal, right?
Yeah,
And everything's changed. So I'm sure the stakes were a little bit different traveling internationally this time, but
totally.
it's wild when you're not at home and you're trying to figure your way back. It's a
Yeah,
crazy thing for
for
sure.
sure.
So you have so many titles, so many things going on. Let's boil it down to what
Yeah.
will be understood by a 13-year-old brain at career
Mm.
day in a school. How do you synthesize what you do on a daily basis to make it make sense to them?
Yeah, what I do is I'm a certified communication coach and trainer. I help people to communicate, to connect. See, many of us haven't been trained in formal communication skills. So my mission and my passion, truly why I'm on this planet, is to help people to connect. And so that starts with ourselves. We got to understand how we're talking to ourselves first, then how we're actually learning about others and understand what they need from us to connect, and then how to keep and maintain connection. So when how my kids describe it to their friends is mama is a person that helps people to communicate better so that they don't fight as much.
Yes. Well, so how when you were that age, what did you want to be when you grew up?
I wanted to be a performer. I wanted to be a psychologist. I was fascinated. Like, I was the kid, Joe, that I was fascinated that words can move people to listen and act, right? And so my mom was a psychologist. So I remember being 12 years old, sneaking into her library, stealing a body language book and reading it from front to back because I wanted to know what the girls at the locker were whispering about. My curiosity was always driving me. And I was the kid that other kids came to and said, "Hey, Sandy, what do I say to get my parents to say yes?" I was always looking at that. So that shifted me into marketing. It was a natural fit where I was so curious. You could create copy that would motivate someone to act and buy. So I had a 15-year career in marketing. And then after that, I was feeling like a fraud. It was about 15 years ago. I had kind of an epiphany because, outside I was looking professional. I had the awards, the team, the sexy office. I was killing it from 9 to 5. But in my personal life, I was failing. And I was failing at communicating at the most important conversations in my life. So that incongruency made me feel like a fraud and a failure. And so it set me on a path to really start understanding communication and emotional intelligence. What was the key? What is the key to effective communication and creating and maintaining connection? So that set me on my path, which then, a decade later, I read everything I could get my hands on to find that key, and I found it. And I used it to grow my business from a bedroom to a top 100. And I even used it on my first date with my now husband of 12 years. So that journey, as I say, that book that I found that started this whole journey 15 years ago, I was looking for a sales book. I wasn't looking for a relationship book. And I found a book that was about emotional motivation. And that changed my life and subsequently has changed thousands of people's lives all over the world.
But all of this started early on in your life. So take me back to the very early years. What examples were around you that taught you this love of communication, this level? Because ultimately,
Oh,
communication is about
yes.
connecting to other human beings. What was it about that? What did you see? What was incubated early on that became you?
Oh, I love this question because it just gave me a feeling of warmth thinking about my family. My family, I was raised in a family of six. Airtime was competitive. You had to get your voice out there quickly. Stories were huge. My dad was a storyteller. He was the person that would walk into a room, find the most uncomfortable person, and immediately put them at ease. And that was so inspiring to me that you could actually move someone from one state to another. And I remember seeing that as a kid, thinking, that's so fascinating that he can just make someone laugh so quickly or make them feel settled or make them feel seen, make them feel heard. So I didn't know the words at the time. I was young, but I remember I can still see it as I'm talking to you right now in my head. Another part was my extended family, my grandparents and my extended family, my uncles, my aunts. We would sit at a family table for like 6 hours. We would have stories. The wine would be flowing for the adults and stuff. And they'd get sillier and sillier, obviously. But the stories would get so much more pronounced and excited and exaggerated. I remember just those were the moments where I really felt like we all had connected so much. I never wanted those dinners to end. And so when it was time to clean up the meal, we'd move it into the kitchen and the kids would start having our own kind of conversations. And so that was a huge factor for me. I think also being bullied at a young age was a massive ingredient in my passion to make people feel more seen and heard. I was bullied at a young age because I was independent and curious and structured, and I didn't have the language then to know what to say back or to know more importantly, what to say to myself. So, and it wasn't a long, treacherous, crazy time period, but it was defining, and it formed my character. So, those elements all formed a natural path for me to be motivated in communication. It's just, I mean, anyone that's known me since a young age is just like, yeah, that's who Sandy is. She's a speaker, she's a trainer, she's a teacher, and she's on a mission to make an impact in her life, and I always was. So yeah, that's really where I think it all was born.
So, who's been that inspirational force throughout your career that's helped you navigate and evolve to this point? Because with communication, with being in this realm of helping people, as times change, I mean, even from like the 90s to AI now, there's all
Mhm.
these market forces that come in. But who has been that kind of stronghold, that heroic force for you?
It's probably not the answer that you'd think. It's been myself.
Yeah.
It's been little Sandy. It's been little Sandy inside of me who's been driving me the entire time. And many times I don't know what she's doing, right? Like my intuition, I listen to it all the time. It takes me to the most amazing places. It makes me go through fear continually. It makes me challenge myself. And little Sandy is insatiably curious. I'm like a 3-year-old, Joe. I mean, I am so curious. I need to know answers, right? To why. Like I'm asking why on everything. So that has been my driver. And then I've been able to gather insight from experts, right? So I'm not afraid to ask questions. I'm not afraid to research, to learn. I hated school. I love learning, so there's a big difference there. I couldn't stand the structure and the pace. It was way too slow. And little Sandy, she needs to move quickly. She needs to understand the answers, and she has 5 more after that. So learning constantly was my driver. And I didn't know that. I mean, I used to be called scattered and impatient and, too ambitious. And what I realized doing the work that I've done and what I train people in now is that I understand what I emotionally need to be happy. And that's achievement and experience, these emotional magnets that I call them. And those are driving my decisions every day. So once I'm aware of that, I accept that and share that with people, they understand why I make the choices I do. So it's not surprising that like people thought I might have been scattered. No, I'm actually really creative. And they might have thought that I was impatient. No, I just really want to make an impact in my life. And they thought maybe that I was too ambitious. Oh, I'm driven. We've got one go at this, Joe. Let's make it worth it, right? So once you understand that shift about yourself and what you truly emotionally need, and more importantly, when you share it with the people you love, the people you work with, you understand your teams, the people in your life, in your orbit, everything falls into place. You start understanding why these people are doing what they're doing, and you have more empathy for them. And more importantly, you understand yourself.
So, who were good communicators, whether it was in pop culture or politics or
Mm.
otherwise, that were kind of either consciously or subconsciously influencing the way that you were trying to refine your communication process?
Yes. So my mom, number one, my mom was an exceptional communicator, was never scared to, I'd call her and I'd say something's going wrong. And she'd say, okay, so ask another question. And then I'd answer that and she'd say, okay, ask another question. And so she would drill down to what actually was the core issue. Many of us have these conversations and we don't go deep enough into what's actually driving us. What's at the core of your concern? We say, oh, I feel stressed or I'm overwhelmed, or we just leave it there instead of diving deeper. So she would always uncover that. Another core influence for me was Wayne Dyer. Huge influence for me in my life to understand the power of our intention, the power of our thoughts. And I've never forgotten that. I still get shivers thinking about it. He was such a pivotal icon in my life. And that was at a time when I really needed support too. I needed a leader to tell me what I didn't know. I was in a failed marriage and I hadn't spoken to my friends in weeks and was burnt out. And I realized like I was failing, even though everyone thought I looked successful. So that piece was intentional for me. I realized reading The Power of Intention was the first self-development book I ever read. And that set me on a path where it's okay to uncover and learn about yourself first, because we can't communicate well with anyone until we understand ourselves. We're having full-blown conversations with ourselves before we even say a word. So those two I'd say were pivotal.
So, what's the greatest speech you've ever witnessed? The greatest oratory that you've ever watched before your eyes?
It was definitely Wayne Dyer. I saw him
Yeah.
live, and he had a philosophy that he was channeling what he was saying. It was the first time I sat 2 rows from the front. I had admired this person for 10 years, and I got an opportunity to view him live. I've never seen a speaker be so present. Like present with the audience, not with himself. So really present on the words he was delivering and feeling and sensing what the audience needed. So for me, that was when I realized it's not just about talking at people. It's actually about connecting the words to the person and learning what the audience feels and needs. And that was huge. Like it was just so inspiring.
So the one thing that's taking over right now, there's concerns and dialogue, is AI, how it's going to affect and shape the way that we as humans interface with each other. What's your take on how AI is going to either enhance or detract from this communication process that we have as human beings?
I was interviewed by Forbes on this because AI is, I'm a huge AI advocate. I like it for efficiency and it's just made things easier, right? However, things are stalling because we're getting lazy. We're getting, as I said in Forbes, AI adoption is stalling because people are communicating only to a couple drivers. Like, hey, this is going to be efficient. This is going to make us stand apart. But what about the people who are freaked out about this, right? What about the people who don't, the people driven by safety, emotional magnet, those people that are saying, well, what does this do for my job? What does this do for my future career? How will this change my life? And those questions aren't being asked or aren't being answered. And also the other people that are looking at, well, what does this experience look like at work now? How will we communicate as a team now? Right? Are we just going to be going through AI? Are we going to be using robots? So when I step back from the situation, Joe, I look at it and I say AI is a tool. At the end of the day, I'm more in demand than ever now because we need human connection. We'll always need it. It may make our it may make our problems and our issues less transparent with people because we're going to AI. A lot of people are going to AI. Okay, I don't want to ask somebody else this question because I'll look like an idiot. I'm going to ask here and I'll have that privacy. The trouble is AI validates. It doesn't act like a human. A human is messy and confusing and there's errors that we make in human relationships in our communication and that's not coming through with AI. So you're going to have people that are reliant on AI to help them get answers, and that's fine. But if you actually want to feel and connect with people, you're going to need to learn to communicate with yourself and others. It's just the way it's going to need to be. And I think what we're finding now in businesses and in teams, we're going to get to a point where we're so efficient with the AI and technology, yet our human connection is going to be the most important thing. I mean, I think it was even, I don't know if it was Forbes or if it was whatever I think it was Forbes that said the number one skill in the future is going to be emotional intelligence. And I agree with that, but it's really about understanding it's just a tool. AI is a tool. And when we use that as a tool, it's not changing our emotional connection with one another.
So, what is the energy for you every day to wake up to do this work that you do? You're helping to transform lives, but you have your soul and your family to look after holistically. When that alarm clock either goes off or doesn't in the morning, what gets you going and motivated to do this work?
I love it. I teach a tool actually, and I use it every morning. I call it the first and last. It's our first thought of the day, and it's our last thought of the day. And it's setting a statement to yourself. When you first wake up, you haven't even taken your head off the pillow, and you're thinking, what is that thought that's coming into your mind? Reaching for your phone, hitting the snooze, or typically thinking about yesterday's problems. And so when you plant a seed, first thought of the day, that sets the trajectory for the day. And so I wake up and I always say, I am worthy, I'm wealthy, I'm healthy, I'm loved. That's my thought of the day. That sets it off for the first day at the beginning of the day. And then at the end of the day, it's just as powerful. And even science says even more powerful because that last thought. So you put down the phone, you've gotten out of the bath, whatever you're doing, you're just about to fall into that state of sleep where you're in the theta brain waves and your subconscious is kicking more into gear, that last thought is the most powerful thought of the day. When you put that into your mind consciously, thinking about what you've got, what your impact is, what you're grateful for, that goes into your subconscious. So those act like bookends to the day. So it's really important that you're mindful of those and start using them because they will set your path for the day.
So let's say you run into a younger version of Sandy, say at like 16 to 18 in a dream tonight. You walk
Yeah.
into a room and there's a film projector, and you click play and it's a highlight reel of the life you've lived, 60 seconds or so. Would that young version of you believe that your life turned out this way?
I think so. I think so. I really do. I think she's always been driven, she's always been curious, and she always wanted to make a difference. And she wanted to help people feel, right? So by helping people to communicate better, you're helping them feel more confident, you're helping them feel more loved, you're helping them feel seen and heard. So yes, I think she'd be like, "Yeah, I'm not surprised you took a few bumps along the way, a few curves." But yeah, she did it.
So, what advice would you give? Would you have any advice for that young version?
I'd say just stick with your curiosity. What I would say is stop worrying so much about what other people think. Just go for it, right? It wasn't until I was in my 40s that I was like, I don't care anymore. Let's just do this, right? And I would probably stop. I had this thing where I always felt like I was younger than anyone else in the room, and I had to work harder.
Hmm.
And I don't know where that came from, but it was something that drove me. I was the only female in a lot of male executive rooms. I was in industries that were typically male, not female, construction, tech, finance. I was doing things that other people hadn't done at my age. And it was because I put my hand up. I would say to her, keep putting your hand up, keep
Yeah.
doing that, keep doing things that scare the crap out of you. Because on the other side of that is growth and amazing insights.
So, let's say you walked into a room of everybody that's known you in a business sense throughout your career, and you swim through that group of people and go to a podium, and you can tell them one fun story about your life that would humanize you a bit. Maybe the first concert you went to, maybe a wonderful place you traveled to that opened up some portal in you. You had revelations, jumping out of an airplane, some kind of fun story that's happened to you that would humanize you to that room. What story would you tell that group?
I don't know why this is popping in my head, but I'll go with it because it always tells me what to do. When I was in grade seven, when I was in grade seven, I was given the task of doing a speech, picking a celebrity, picking anyone special that was important to me, and doing a speech. And so I thought for days about, okay, well, what I'm going to do. At the time, I liked Marilyn Monroe. So I was like, oh, she just seemed cool. She had two lives, right? She had the lives to the public, and then she had the lives in the past. And so I thought, okay, I'm going to do this speech. So instead of just walking into the classroom, I actually came out first in as myself, as Norma Jean Baker and who she was. And then I left the classroom, changed into Marilyn Monroe gear, and I came back out as Marilyn Monroe. And that transformation, that bravery at grade seven to be able to do something so bold and different, it was amazing to me that I just went for it. And those types of things I've done continually in my business career over and over and over again. So I don't know why that just popped into my head, so I had to share it with you.
That's great. I remember those were seminal moments for me, speech and acting and all that. And I had a teacher in high school, and she had a great heart, but she was real high strung, and everybody had this weird relationship with her. And at one point, we could just do improv, and I got up and I acted like I was a talk show host, and I kind of was ribbing and making fun of her, and I got in really big trouble for doing that. But I remember it was like everybody was ecstatic that I did it because I was kind of mimicking how she acts. But man, it was a bad career choice, really bad career choice. But
But
those
that's
moments, though, when you
yeah.
decide that you're going to do certain things, those can really set you up, no matter if
Yeah.
they go really good or bad, to give you that kind of feeling of what you want to do in the future.
100%. And then that courage, because that's what it was, right? Courage to do something, especially when you're a young kid, because judgment is so important. That courage went all the way through me. And I just remembered another one where I remember I called up this maven in Vancouver. He had three major businesses, and I just called him up and I kept insisting to get through to that person. And I just wanted to go for a coffee with him. And it was like a challenge of him saying yes. He actually did say yes to me. And I remember going there thinking, I'm going to throw up. I don't even know what I'm going to say to this guy, right? Like I was so nervous. And I Googled him afterwards to get some research. And I realized, holy moly, like this person just said yes to me because I was persistent. So those lessons of just going for it and having that courage to express yourself and to ask for what you want, huge, huge value to your life.
There's something about going in person. I notice with these younger Z generations, they don't necessarily go in person. It's not a part of
Mm.
their level of grit and courage. I remember I worked at a YMCA at one point in the inner city in Kansas City, Kansas, and I had a whole bunch of kids write a letter to the mayor because there was a lot of things they didn't like. And we
Mhm.
literally walked to City Hall and we went upstairs and she was not happy. I mean, she took it, but I could tell she wanted it to be scheduled. But we just walked up and we were like, hey, these are all the kids, and they just went
Nice.
in and gave her the letters and but sometimes you got to do that. If you really want to get in front of somebody, you got to do it in person,
That's right. Totally. 100%.
you
I
know?
mean, we connect differently in person than we do over the phone or text.
Yeah. So when you look back over the trajectory of your career, what's the biggest risk that you've taken?
But creating my own business
Yeah.
really was the biggest risk. I think, I had left a six-figure income. I just launched e-gaming in Canada. I'd done some amazing things, but it was at that moment, a spectacular failure forced me to create my own business. So I had just gone to like really exotic places, Iceland and Denmark and Hong Kong, Kamloops, like not just major places to learn e-gaming. Canada wasn't doing it at the time. And I had two little ones at the time, so they were 2 and 3. And I came back 24 hours of traveling, and all I wanted to do was just go to the cottage with the kids. So wake up in the morning and I'm walking with them hand in hand through the forest. And my son breaks free and he runs ahead and he trips over a tree. And this branch is in his way and he scrapes his knee and he starts crying. And so, of course, I run over to him and I'm like, Jackie, Jackie, it's okay. Mommy's here. I'll make it better. And he looks up at me and he shakes his head and he says, No, Rachel. Rachel was my nanny. So I could still feel that. I was like, whoa, what? Like, what? This child of mine is reaching for a nanny rather than his own mother when he's hurt. The whole world just flipped, right? At that point, I was like, what is going on? And especially being raised in family as my number one value, this was like, wait, what is happening? So I remember saying to my husband at the time, okay, that's it. I'm going to stay at home and I'm going to be a stay-at-home mom and forget my career. I'm putting my family first. And he laughed at me because, like I'm ambitious. And also I was bored on mat leave. I had to alphabetize the soup cans. Like I was so bored. There's no way staying home with kids would satisfy my needs. But I thought, okay, maybe there's something else I can do. I went into the president's office that following week and I told him, shared the story. And I was very distraught. And I said, I've got to stop working here. I've got to work at home. And he said, why can't you do both? And I hadn't even considered that. I hadn't, because when you're in something, especially when you're stressed and you're in distraught, you don't see stuff, right? So he was like, "Well, why don't you do what you're doing, but do it from home?" And this was way before work from home, and we'll be your first client. And I was like, "Wow, okay." So I went home. The kids and I drew a little in and out sign. We hung it on my door. Mommy's business was open. Bedroom business. Not saying it was a bedroom business. It was a consultancy in my bedroom.
Yeah.
Let's be clear. But and that's how I started. And I remember thinking, wow, this is actually happening. I had that one client, and after that one client had finished, I was like, oh, now I got to sell. And that was scary. I knew how to market, I didn't know how to sell.
Yeah.
And that's what led me to the research that I went through and the work that I found on emotional motivation. And that path continued along. So, I've been on this journey, but I'm also on this journey listening to where I'm supposed to go and having spectacular failures along the way that are guiding me in the right direction. And that was one that a lot of clients would say to me, I'm very humbled by that story because not many people are going to share that spectacular failure. It was horrible. Proud to say my relationship with my children is spectacular. Because I've gone through failure, because
Yeah.
they've seen mom struggle. They've seen me be a single mom for 10 years and come out the other side into a relationship which is respectful and loving. So it's just so cool how life takes these turns for us. And if we're paying attention to what is truly happening, the lessons and what we're saying to ourselves, we come out the side that we're supposed to.
So at the end of the day, everyone has a perception of you, family, friends, clients, readers, everyone in different capacities, but you run the show. What's your
Yeah.
perception of you? Who do you think you are?
I'm still little Sandy. I am. I'm still little Sandy who wants to help people and be curious and be creative and make an impact. And that's, who I wake up every day being. I'm still this way on a stage when I'm talking to thousands of people, and I'm still that way in the book when people read it. I'm just me because that's why I'm here, is to help people to communicate, to connect.
So, Emotional Magnetism, if everybody wants to get a copy, they want to catch you live, they want to hire you, they have questions, any of the good business, where do they go?
Yeah, they can go to sandygerber.com.
Okay.
That's probably the best place. Lots of free resources there to help them too, to get a taste of how to improve their communication. And, the book is a great resource for people. There's a quiz in there so you can figure out, what am I actually emotionally needing in my life? And there's only four. So find out what it is, share it with the people in your life. It's going to change your life. And I also have a podcast, Magnetic Communication. It's not as amazing as your podcast. You've done so many episodes. But
No.
it's I was really pleased. I'd actually asked the readers or the listeners for their support. I was just nominated for a Women's Podcasters Award for magnetic communication in the mindset and mental health category. And I think that's so crucial nowadays, especially the way the world is.
Yeah.
So if they listen to an episode and would care to vote, womenspodcasters.com/magnetic-communication.
I can put all these links in the show notes. Sandy, this has been absolutely wonderful. Thank you for such a wonderful interview. Thank you for the work you're doing, and best of luck with everything.
Thank you so much, Joe. I really appreciate it.
You bet.